Hello, everyone. My name is Abraham Ramirez, and today I'd like to discuss about the environmental social movement, specifically the origins of the movement in the United States and the history of one of the biggest environmental organizations at that time and today, Greenpeace International. And so I would like to first discuss about the origins of the environmental movement throughout human history, and before we talk about the United States involvement in it. And so in the earliest civilizations, we have people have saw the impact that human-made contamination in the rivers, air, and land, and have warned about the effects we can further cause into it, such as the people in the Greek civilization, the Indus, and in 14th century London, when we have started to burn coal for in the cities. And so the first, one of the first recorded environmental activists were the Bishnoi Hindus in Gujarati in 1720, where they attempted to protect the forest that the Maharaja of Jodhpur had felt to build himself a palace. And it led to over 363 of them being slaughtered in the end. And so the origins of the movement in the 19th century mainly happened during and after the Industrial Revolution, because it led to concerns about the countryside and wilderness and pollution that we humans have been doing due to industrialization moving further into the west side and to the national reserves that we have there. And so the US first environmentalists were mainly focused on a conservation of the wilderness rather than stopping the increasing of fossil fuels being consumed. So one of these were John Moore, who helped found the Sierra Club, it was another massive environmental organization to this day. Henry Thoreau, an American nationalist who helped publish Walden, which is a book talking about his life in the simplicity of nature and helping to increase the idea of it. And Gifford Pinchot, who was an American forester and politician, and was also the first chief of the United States Forest Reserve, who helped increase the nation's forest reserve by three times there was. And so, moving on to the 20th century environmentalism, sadly, due to an increase in experienced pollution assessed by civilians, it led to more awareness and members of the movement being increased throughout this time. Some of these tragedies were in the Donor Smog, Pennsylvania in 1948, which led to several people being killed due to the awful toxins being inhaled within the city itself. And also in the Cuyahoga River fire in Ohio in 1969, as well as another California river fire in the exact same year. And so this has helped environmentalists and activists to focus to push laws to help solve the biggest issues in the United States environment caused by the Industrial Revolution and to help preserve the remaining national reserves. One of these people is the infamous 26th president of the US, Teddy Roosevelt, who was considered to be the conservationist president and have helped create the United States Forest Service, which led to hundreds of national parks being renamed as federal natural reserves. And so people have stated that the trigger of the modern environmental movement can be merely be caused by Rachel Carson's in her book Silent Spring, which was published in 1962. This led to her being labeled as the mother of modern environmentalism because she helped warn about the dangers of pesticides in agriculture and crops for humans. Specifically, she was mostly talking about the impact DDT was having on the agriculture and the soil of the United States. One of the famous quotes that she said was, only within the moment of time represented by the present century has one species, man, acquired significant power to alter the nature of the world. And so this has provided the impetus for tighter control of pesticides and awakening concern for the environment. So an example of this was the national ban of DDT being implemented in agriculture. And so, in the late 20th century, specifically in the post-war period, the environmentalist movement had become much more bigger and even more global than ever before. And they focused more on the preservation now of the natural environment rather than just conservation. AKA, they focus more on clean energy resources instead of just continuously using fossil fuels. And so more radical and environmental organizations were born, while existing ones grew exponentially in memberships, such as the Earth First organization, the Sierra Club, and the Wilderness Society. The movement became a culture of political activism thanks to the occurring civil rights and anti-war movements that were also occurring during this time. And so one of the major accomplishments during this time that helped increase and regulate to preserve the environment were the Clean Air Acts of 1963, 67, Clean Air Act of 1960, and the Water Quality Act of 1965. And other domestic and international actions was the creation of the very first Earth Day in April 22, 1970, and the World Environment Day in 1973, created by the UNEP. And some of the most popular slogans for that movement was "There's no Planet B," save our forests, go green, save our cities, save our soil, save our water, save our air, and climate action now. Meaning that they were not just focusing on the forest and the rivers, they're also focusing on the climate and the soil and the animals that we were affecting thanks to in part to industrialization and modernization around the country. Now, I'd like to discuss about one of the biggest environmental groups that I have decided to study, and that's Greenpeace. They started out as a small anti-war group of activists formed in 1971 in Vancouver, Canada, and it's unclear of who were the exact founders of this, but during the very first mission, which was to protest underground nuclear testing by the US military in Nachika, a tiny volcanic island off western Alaska, they have gained steady increase in memberships and more impacting members who have helped contribute to the communication and process strategies that Greenpeace has today. And today, Greenpeace is an independent, nonprofit global campaigning organization that exposes global environmental problems and their causes, which means that they praise nonviolent confrontation and they have memberships of over 3 million members now and offices in over 50 countries. And what's infamous to them is their green ship vessels that they have first started using during the very first movement in 1971. And they're now considered the largest environmental organization in the world. So Greenpeace's goals and values are, according to the mission page, Greenpeace's goal is to ensure the ability of Earth to nurture life in all its diversity, meaning that they stand for positive change through action to defend the natural world and promote peace. While other goals are also to protect biodiversity in all its forms, prevent pollution and abuse of our oceans, land, air, and water, and nuclear threats, and to promote peace and global disarmament. And four of their core values include personal responsibility and nonviolence towards anyone. Their independence means that they don't take money or contributions from political parties or government officials. And Greenpeace has no permanent friends or foes, meaning if an organization wants to work with them, they will work with them back. And they also promote solutions, meaning they develop, research, and promote concrete steps towards a green and peaceful future for everyone. Their key players over four of them were Bob Hunter, a Canadian journalist who was the co-founder of Greenpeace and a core member of the Don't Make a Wave Committee, which was the original name for the Greenpeace organization. And he mainly used media mind bombs, a form of communication in the media that would help blast around the world in the guise of news about their current events or actions and help make Greenpeace a common household name. Another group is Dorothy and Irving Stowe, who were also co-founders of Greenpeace, and he adopted the Quaker idea of bearing witness to injustice and speaking out to others. And these are one of the values that Greenpeace still uses to this day, and also as a form of communication and protest. Another member was Bill Darnell, a Canadian ecologist and co-founder of Greenpeace also, who was infamous for making the modern name of Let's Make It a Greenpeace after witnessing a peace sign after they left their original HQ in the bottom of a church. And they called this old boat, and another person was David McTaggart, a Canadian environmentalist and co-founder, who was infamous for calling his own boat Greenpeace 3 and set sail towards stopping a French nuclear weapons test after seeing the Greenpeace newspaper ad about a new environmental organization taking place. And so he was also key in taking Greenpeace globally and creating Greenpeace International. So, one of the major types of communication strategies that Greenpeace uses till this day is that they created a direct action environmental strategy through the distribution of powerful pragmatism altering photographs and video clips, meaning they both use the bearing witness traditions as well as Robert Hunter's idea of mind bombs that uses captured events on video and in photographs to disseminate them as widely as possible to influence the public consciousness on the current issue they are currently taking part in. An example of this was one of the first campaigns, which was the anti-whaling expedition of 1975, which led to them being intentionally fired at the whale behind two of the members, and which later became the mind-blowing moment of that expedition. And it helped solidify their whaling crusade to the media and helped solidify them as a positive and active organization. And they also communicate Greenpeace activities through action, surveys, reports, goals, and successes to the public and select targeted groups to further educate them. Their major types of protests include several original and popular nonviolent protests that were keen with other organizations during the modern environmental movement in the 20th and 21st century. One of these are sit-ins, such as the sitting on the Capitol Hill to protest Schumer's and Manchin's permit deal in 2022, marches such as the 2017 Climate March, flyers, which, for example, Greenpeace activists handed out flyers to employees of the Volkswagen factory in Wolfsburg 2011, and also the infamous forms of protest direct actions, such as climbings. An example of this is Greenpeace oil protesters covering Rishi Sunak's home in the plain flag fabric in 2023, activists in kayaks raising shellno.org, Arctic drilling equals climate chaos banners to stop Shell's movement into Seattle in 2015, and also through several popular campaigns such as Saving the Arctic and Defending Democracy, and also brand jacking, which means they used companies' slogans and iconic images to help display their current effect in the environment, such as the Green My Apple campaign. So one of the social controls that both the movement and the organization has faced throughout their years of protesting and creating change was policing, meaning that there were crackdowns and arresting of direct action activists and protesters. An example of these were activists arrested while protesting the building of Cop City in Atlanta in 2023 and last year. And recently, and a couple years ago, Greenpeace activists were arrested after anti-whaling action at the North Sea. And so the organization has not faced does not move without any challenges, either real or perceived. And several of the challenges they face are complaints and legal actions due to some of their direct on protests, such as activists damaging a plot of GMO wheat and the Nazca lines, which was a Peruvian and UN World Heritage Site. And they also face criticism for their stance on important sources and resources for the poor and for all the other alternating sources of clean energy, such as their stance against nuclear energy, her stance against golden rice, which is a popular rice used in third world countries who need more or in close to starvation and famines, GMO foods, and milk consumptions, even for indigenous tribes who have eaten them for centuries. And the overall challenges that the movement faces are the lack of diversity within the movement. What this means is that minorities are the most affected by the environmental damages, but they only count for several section of members or lead roles in several environmentalist organizations. And there has sadly been an increase of anti-environmentalists in the public, who are organizations who are most interested in other sources besides the environment, such as the economy, and who mostly think that the environmentalist organization and groups are or exaggerating or falsely claiming the impact humans are actually making in the world, such as for oil producers and mining companies. And and even though there have been several successes in the environmental movement, there has been further damages to the environment since the start of it, such as increase in urbanization, farming and industry, overfishing, and rising temperatures around the world. But even though the organization has faced challenges in the past, they have still have a history of major accomplishments from the organization, such as in 1991, that after lobbying by Greenpeace and other organizations, the 39 Antarctic Treaty signatories agreed to a 50-year ban of mineral exploitation on the continent. In 2006, 2 million hectares of the Canadian Great Bear rainforest are now protected from logging. And recently in 2023, where 20 years of campaigning leads to the United Nations officially landing on an agreement for a global ocean treaty, which will help secure protection for 30% of our global oceans by 2030. And so this concludes my presentation, but I hope that both this movement and organization had many more successes to come in the future to help preserve the environment for not just the United States, but also for the entire world in general. Thank you very much.